Hello and welcome to What's Up Doc's coverage of both the 2022 Hambletonian Stakes and the Oaks being run at the Meadowlands on Saturday, August 6th and being televised on Fox Sports 2, plus other television and streaming services that afternoon. We interviewed 4 Standardbred superstar guests and collected some racing insight. They are John Campbell, Billy ODonnell, Tim Tetrick, and Gregory Peck. Please check out both of our 2-part interviews. Thank you. I'd like to introduce Tim Tetrick, a superstar standardbred driver and 2020 U.S. Harness Writers Association Hall of Fame honoree. Number 1 in the continent for 9 years of purses won during his 26 professional years. Number 3, all-time career driver earnings of just shy of $250 million with just shy of 13,000 wins. He's won 20 Breeders' Crown races, 3 U.S. Pacing Triple Crown races, 1 U.S. Trotting Triple Crown race, and that was the Hambletonian with market share in 2012, and 36 other major races. Tim, welcome, and thanks so much for giving us some of your precious time. I know how crazy things might be just preparing for this big day on Saturday.
Yeah, no doubt, Doc.
Yeah, and I know you're in 2 big races. You're probably in many more, but the ones that, for the sake of my audience, we're following are the Hambletonian and the Oaks. So I'm going to pitch this first question. Saturday, we'll be watching several of the best trotters in this country race for one of this year's most prestigious Standardbred Stakes races. Amidst the competition, what jumps out at you most regarding the competition, the equine talent, the competitive super drivers, and the top trainers? What strikes you as being unique or of noteworthiness for this year?
Well, it's the best of the best. You're taking the top 10 drivers and trainers and top 10 horses of this year, the 3-year-old group. So it's a great race, and it's a very prestigious race, and it's a stacked deck. It's a lot of good horses in there.
Okay, this year is kind of unique. We have 2 very talented fillies in the Hambo, which is an open stakes race. And in the past, in 2020, Ramona Hill, which is a Muscle Hill filly, and by the way, you're on a Muscle Hill colt. And in 2018, Atlanta, a Chapter 7 filly, which you drove Chapter 7, they each won the Hambletonian. Do you think, I know you're looking to win the trophy, and quite frankly, everyone I talk to says you've got the greatest opportunity, but how do you stake these fillies up with the boys this year?
They're very talented fillies. Good on the connections to take that chance and put them in there and go for the $1 million. And it's going to make a great race. There's a lot of storylines to it. It's always nice to talk about the girls trying to beat the boys, but hopefully that don't happen this year.
Okay, I'm going to ask you one quick favor to maybe just speak up a little bit because your audio is coming in a little bit light, but just so you know.
Okay.
Again, just for the audience's sake, Rebuff, the horse you're driving is a Muscle Hill colt, and Muscle Hill won the Hambo in 2009 and went on. He's a very, very successful sire. You're coming out of post number 1. I had a chance to talk to Greg Peck, Muscle Hill's trainer, in the interview, and he said that Muscle Hill also came out of post 1 or hole 1. And he thought that was a good spot for you. A lot of the drivers tend to shy away from that choice. Give me your opinion on your horse and your post position 1.
I'm super confident in my horse. Would the rail be my first choice? No, but that's what they gave us, so we're going to make it work. And just the rail is sometimes getting out of there. You got to be too aggressive, or you got to make sure somebody doesn't slam down in front of you and jam you up and stuff. And I like just having the options, audibles, be able to call audibles and stuff.
Now, also, it's interesting because in the Oaks, for the race for fillies only, you're driving Fashion Schooner or Schooner. You represent a great owner, Jules Siegel of Fashion Farms, who won in 1995, won the Hambo with Tagliabue and John Campbell as his driver. I happened to cross a couple times with him during my stint at Tufts Veterinary School. That one, you got the 10 position all the way on the far outside. So you're going into these 2 big races, one right against the rail and the other one on the outside. Some people say there's a strategic disadvantage to that. What's your opinion on having the outside rail, and do you have any special words of how you might consider compensating for that?
It's not the best draw. It's the worst draw on the racetrack. As far as outside, and it's a lot more feet that horse has to travel. And luckily, my mare's got plenty of tactical speed. She's big and strong, and I think we're going to do the best we can with it. She's a very good horse, and coming in the race good. Won a very good heat and elimination, and I think she'll be fine.
Well, I always hate to ask drivers, trainers, who's going to win a race they're in, because obviously you're going to win it. But if you had to pick a couple of the horses besides yours that you're going to be keeping a special eye on, who are you looking at?
There's 4 or 5 in the Hambletonian that could step up and win. The 2 fillies, they both race really good in the elimination. Marcus Melander's other trotting colt, the one Orion's driving. He's a son of Wallner. Very nice horse. In the filly division, Nifty Norman's filly is very nice. Got tons of talent. And, there's 3 or 4 that can step up and get the job done.
Anything, with the fillies, anyone, some people are touting as Venerable as probably being the horse to beat. I don't put your horse down.
She's the champion from last year. She made $1 million at 2. Her last 2 starts have been super impressive. The filly out of Canada that won the elimination actually beat Jules Siegel's mare there in the elimination race for Mark Stacy. Raced awesome. Absolutely was flying down the lane to win her elimination. So, you got to respect those fillies.
Well, Tim, I wish I could talk to you all day, but I appreciate the time you gave me. You're one of the superstars, still up and coming, got a lot of youthful years to keep increasing your record. And we wish you the best. We wish a safe race for you and for everyone else. And we wish the owners, the connections, the best. And thanks again for your expertise and your comments, and good luck on Saturday.
Thanks, Doc. Appreciate it.
I want to welcome prominent standardbred trainer Greg Peck. He was awarded top trainer by U.S. Harness Writers Association in 2009. One of his most outstanding accomplishments was as trainer of Muscle Hill, who was undefeated in his last 20 out of 21 starts, winning by 4 lengths. He won the 2009 Hambletonian and simultaneously that same day, the Peter Houghton. He's also won the Kentucky Futurity, 2 Breeders' Crown races, plus awarded multiple Trotter and Harness Horse of the Year awards. Muscle Hill himself earned $3.25 million in purses. In 2016, Muscle Hill was inducted into the U.S. Harness Racing Hall of Fame. And in 2020, Muscle Hill was the leading money-winning trotting sire, with offspring earning over $9.6 million. In 2020, his daughter Ramona Hill won the Hambletonian Stakes. Greg Peck has also trained multiple other stakes winners. He's a buyer, trainer, and manager of standardbred horses. Plus, he's also a media trainer at Fine Line Inc. Greg, welcome, and thanks for taking the time to give us your assessment of the 2022 Hambletonian, with a couple pieces on the Oaks, which are going to be at the Meadowlands this coming Saturday.
Well, Doc, it's always a pleasure to be with you. And, we've had a great friendship for years. And I can remember the day I met you, and you'd be somebody that I would say was somebody I learned a lot from in my career and was lucky to really know. And you think to get a great horse, and I've had a few great ones, you got to be good, you got to be lucky too, and you got to be around good people, and you were one of them.
Well, thank you very much. That humbles me. I had a conversation earlier today with your dear friend Billy O'Donnell, and basically I said, we're all hooked on the same thing. We're all part of the same tribe. I'm not saying we go to the same church, but we're hooked on the same tribe. Yeah. And that's the love of horses. And I know you're one of those people that's passionate. He is, and so too is John Campbell. And we're hoping to get Tim Tetrick on here too. If we weren't that passionate, we wouldn't be donating and investing so much time in this crazy world. It's not an easy way to make a living. Having said that, why don't you kind of briefly tell me a little about your experience with Muscle Hill, because he was such a remarkable horse. I can go on and on about him, but let's talk a little bit about him. Give me a brief summary of why he was so outstanding and special to you.
Well, you can probably reflect more now than you could then, because when you were going through it, you didn't look at it and say, well, he's absolutely going to win. You never ever felt that way. You felt at some point he would lose, something might happen. But, Dean Hoffman, who has done a body of work in harness racing like no other. You could say the Stan Bergsteins of the world, and the late Stan Bergstein, who was also a colleague and friend of mine. But as Dean Hoffman said around Hambletonian time, when Muscle Hill won the Hambletonian, it was a trotting exhibition, not competition. And I never thought of it that way, but now I start to think of it that way, especially when I watch the other sports of racing, such as take like the Kentucky Derby. Well, they're worried about the draw, the trip, the this, the that, the other thing. Where Muscle Hill could really make his own luck. And the other thing is Brian Sears always put him in the right spot. He never took it for granted and put him in a compromising spot. So, but he said he was like pushing buttons in a sports car, and he was great to begin with. And I've always said this: if somebody else had have trained him, would he be as good? Maybe. It might have been better. Who knows? Might not have been as good, but we'll never know. But we managed him certainly in a way that everything was planned. There's no doubt about it. Everything, all the I's were dots and all the T's were crossed. That's for sure.
Well, that leads me to an interesting question that I asked Billy O earlier. When you look at your equine athlete,
Mm-hmm.
what percent of the win is attributable to that equine athlete versus the driver and versus the trainer? I mean, is there any way to quantitate that?
Well, most great drivers like John or Billy O'Donnell would probably, give a lot of credit to the horse. That's for sure. And I'm sure if you talk to Dexter Dunn today, if you talk to Tim Tetrick, they'd probably say a similar thing. But I say to them, well, wait, now I've seen guys that are not good at it lose with a great horse. There is no doubt about it. So it all has to be part of the program, put it that way. But it's probably, we'll say, and we're assuming that the driver is usually a competent top driver. And at that point, it's probably 95% the horse. But remember, a length is a lot. So, it's a very precise thing. So I would say that, yeah, it's probably 80% the horse, 10% the trainer, and maybe 10% the driver, about the same thing.
Okay, well, that sounds like a fair assessment. It's interesting. I asked the same question of a world famous show jumper, Joe Fargas, won 2 Olympic gold medals, and he thought that the horse rider combination was a special combination. He thought that some riders were better suited to certain horses than others. And if you took that same horse with the same talent, you gave them a different rider, they probably wouldn't fare as well. And I don't know if that's true, but like partners in life, maybe he's right.
In that case, with a horse like Muscle Hill, I always said it's not what I did, it's what I didn't do. I didn't over race them. And I can name them all. By the time they went to the breeding shed, they were pretty tired. And I also was big on the Tessio theory of one of his tenets were the fact that he thought that the stallion should be vibrant when he got to the breeding shed. And Muscle Hill, when he finished at the Breeders' Crown in Toronto, he about looked at me and said, "Is this it? Is it over?" Yeah, it's over. Where most of them are, they go into the stallion world with a little bit of a cloud because they raced maybe one too many times. So that's where, that's no accident. So, to say anybody could have driven him, anybody could have trained him, would be a reach, put it that way. But, could a competent trainer and a competent driver do well? Of course. But, again, I go back, you got to be lucky too, that the fact that what if I had trained them? I have a friend, Mitchell Skolnick, who is responsible for stallions such as the great Always Be Mickey now, and Always a Virgin Indiana, and several others, and has won the Hambletonian Oaks himself, says that everything had to happen the way that it did. What if you did one little thing different and he stubbed his toe or something? And there is an element of that. That is true.
Yep. And even the great horses at some point get beat. They don't always have perfect days or perfect trips every day.
Have that, both of those, though. It just seemed that Muscle Hill, now that it's all over, because I follow the thoroughbreds, remember Secretary get beat.
Yep, twice.
Yeah. at the the bottom line is that or they were really strongly urged on their hands and knees to win, and Muscle Hill never was. Well, that was interesting.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting. This year we have two very talented fillies entered into the Hambletonian Stakes. Again, making the closest comparison to the racing world with thoroughbreds, not very common, although it's been happening a little bit more over time. It seems that there are more opportunities for a filly to win in the standardbred world, and I'm not quite sure what that's attributable to. But this year, having two really top fillies has changed the formula a bit, and they actually have some real shot at winning. You have any thoughts on that?
Well, yeah, they have a shot at winning, but and I'm not biased here, that Rebuff looks to be the horse, and he drew the rail. Matter of fact, I saw Tim Tetrick today at Harris, Philadelphia, and said that was a good thing too, because when I chose the rail, matter of fact, you mentioned the Peter Houghton and the Hambletonian, I chose the rail with both of them. When people say, "What, you're crazy? You choose the rail, you might get locked in. Somebody, this might happen, that might happen," but so he's lucky as well that he drew the rail. He could have drawn anywhere from 1 to 5. Tim Tetrick is really a great driver. You're talking one of the all-time greats. He's that great. You have Lucas Wallen, who I'll tease him. He's a protege of mine. We were together for several months there, and I think that hopefully he learned a few things from me, and he's impressionable, and he's a hard worker, and he's in the zone right now. So he's going to be really hard to beat. There's no doubt about that. And he's a son of Muscle Hill. And the other interesting thing to me is, of all of the Muscle Hills that have been contenders, that he looks and presents himself on the track the most like Muscle Hill. I'd have to say that Rebuff really, is. If you look over the back of my head here, you can see Muscle Hill's portrait there, his head, but everything about him and Rebuff, they're pretty similar. And the fillies do have a chance. I mean, Dexter Dunn is on the filly that won last week, so that's a plus. He's really in the zone, as I said. And then you have Brian Sears, who's on the other filly. To me it's kind of hard to go wrong there. But you never know. It's a horse race. But at this point, I would be surprised if Rebuff didn't win.
Okay. Well, moving on along these lines, it's interesting because Tim Tetrick will be with Fashion Schooner in the Oaks, and he's drawn the 10th position. So he's going in the Hambo on the rail, and he's going the far outside on the last one. So we'll see what kind of day he has. But as you said, he's one of the best out there and one of the up and coming.
Yeah.
The other thing I wanted to point out, which is interesting, that's the breeding with Ramona Hill being a Muscle Hill filly.
Yeah.
It brings me into perspective a bit. He was also, the outstanding sire of sires in 2020, but I see him following a little bit in the path of Secretariat, where he's great to have on the female side too.
Well,
and they crossed him with Chapter 7 filly, and then they got this super horse Walner, who everyone is going to.
Well, what's interesting, too, when you talk about the fillies, Venerable, who I thought last year she'd be the one in the Hambletonian. She looked like she was better than the colt last year. She looked like a Snow White or a Mission Brief, that type. That I was really impressed with her. And she's out of the Dolly Parton song, Jolene, Jolene, trained by Nifty Norman, driven by David Miller. So, again, you have another great driver, trainer who won the Glenn Garnsey Award last year for Trainer of the Year, and it's a Walner out of a Muscle Hill mare. So that would be the one I'd be looking for there.
Okay. It's interesting because the last time we chatted online here, we were talking about the Breeders' Crown, and the stallion that everyone was paying attention to then was Captain Treacherous. Now I see that all the hot breedings are coming out of Walner, and still Muscle Hill and Chapter 7. So those three seem to be concentrating, at least at this time of the year.
Yeah.
Is there some, this is the way it's going to be from here on, or is it just the luck of the draw, like statistics? Sometimes
Well,
in life are hot and sometimes they're not.
Wallner has a long way to go before he's a Muscle Hill. I mean, he's certainly the popular one now, and he does have the advantage that he can breed Muscle Hill mares. But up until this point, I mean, we're only kind of a couple of years in, and it's a trendy business. But he's certainly very good, and he probably has this going for him, that Muscle Hill has not sired one near himself, which would be hard to do. He might not ever do that because there wasn't a Muscle Hill before. There might not be another one again. So Wallner has that advantage too, that, Muscle Hill's bar hopping, who's a pretty good sire. Southwind Frank's a pretty good sire. Who else does he have? Muscle Hill. That's, again, has some decent ones. Tactical Landing is getting better now, and I thought that he might be the one because he really had the ability, had everything going for him, and trained by Bob Stewart his 2-year-old year, and Bob Stewart had Andover, Angus, Conway, Hall, and creatine. So it seems that some guys seem to have luck with stallions as well.
Well, just playing upon what you just said, which is interesting. Again, I know the thoroughbred world a little bit better than the standardbred world, although I've worked in many arenas in both. And there was a super racehorse and an even better stallion named Bold Ruler, and he really wasn't throwing any sons like himself until his much, much later years. I mean, the years just before he was pensioned, and he came out with a super colt named Secretariat. So there's still hope.
Well, and look at Northern Dancer, though, that he really sired great ones, on both sides of the water. I mean, that's the thing. Didn't he have Nijinsky? Was Nijinsky a Northern Dancer?
Yeah, and what happened was with Northern Dancer, he was, I think, to my knowledge, the highest ever paid stallion. People owned shares in him. It was nearly impossible to get breedings. And back in the day, when he was limited in the number of mares he'd cover naturally, they didn't have AI. There were people that were putting up $1 million, no guarantee foal, just a guaranteed breeding, with the hope that they'll catch the mare. That's because the foals at the sales would bring $1 or $2 million. From that on, it was crazy.
Isn't Galileo? Is he by Nijinsky?
That I don't know.
Yeah, well,
that I don't know.
But he's the great sire now.
Yeah, but having said that, even with Secretariat, he wasn't the sire of sires, but he did become a very, very strong broodmare sire, and this could happen even with Muscle Hill in these following years, although he was a sire of sires also. So, I mean, it almost reminds me of the guy who gets a great racehorse, and then he also gets a great breeding prospect. It doesn't come along that often, like a Speedy Crown or something like that. It doesn't happen that often, no. So it's all good. Anyway, do you find a difference in training fillies versus colts? Is there a psychological difference here, or you think it's similar? Because some trainers appear to get, I don't know, identified as a trainer of fillies or a trainer of colts. I don't know that that's fair. What's your opinion?
Well, in my opinion, I've had good success with both, and I think you have to adapt to them. I say this about a trotter, a pacer, a colt, or a filly. You kind of have to adapt to them and do what's right by them. And if you can do that, if you can customize it, the same as it, in the media training when I would do an Exxon Mobil, say, or a Merck Pharmaceutical, if you customize it to them, you do really well. The same in your practice. That I'm sure that if you know a horse, you know the trainer, you know the breeding, you know what the horse needs to get done in his career, and you can customize. You can do most things, put it that way. So, but there's certainly there's guys that have an affinity for colts or fillies. There's no doubt about that.
Well, I think you already sort of gave me the answers in advance, but we're going to wrap up here, and I'll ask you this question more directly. Based upon the horses, drivers, and trainers who qualified these two races, they're amazing group of a crop this year. What's your predictions for the outcome of either one of these races? What do you see unfolding?
Well, again, I see rebuff in the Hambletonian, especially now that he has the rail, because I like the rail. It's the shortest way around, and it's not like the Derby where you got to worry about the rail where you could run into the hub rail. kind of thing when you come out of that stall number one. We don't have that. We have pylons now and everything, so you don't have to worry about that. You've got Tim Tetrick. He's won it before, but he's truly terrific. There's no doubt about it. So you've got that, and again, as I said, Lucas Wallen is in the zone. He's young, recently married to Michaela Melander, so he's even got that, the Melanders, breeding there, we'll say, and she's even expecting a son, by the way. And I told her that. I said, there's a lot of men that wanted a son and didn't have one. I said Wayne Gretzky and Toby, or Wayne Gretzky and Tim McGraw. I named a couple of them. And I said, and she's going to have a boy. So he's lucky this year too, Lucas. So it certainly is pointing in that direction. Now, as far as the Oaks, I just think if Venerable, she had, a few hiccups, but if she comes back, the way she was, I mean, she was dominant last year. I mean, I saw her a couple of nights. I just said, wow. So, and again, it'd be interesting to talk about your theme. If Muscle Hill won the Hambletonian and one of his daughters, like Jolene and Venerable, won the Oaks.
All right. Well, super trainer Greg Peck, you've been in the game a while, and you've been very successful, and you brought up a lot of interesting talent, and you were one of the very privileged few to end up with one of the diamonds, originally in the rough, but you polished that diamond over the years, and it'll go down in the history books as a legacy forever. So I want to thank you so much for participating in this little group discussion to try to help the public draw an interest in the Hambo and the Oaks, and if they could even bet on some of these horses besides rooting for them. And I thank you so much for everything.
Doc, thank you, and always a pleasure, and heartfelt. What I said in the opening, I'm proud and happy and lucky to know you.
Okay, don't make me blush on camera here, but thank you so much, and we'll be talking to you. We encourage all our audience to either attend or watch the televised coverage of these prestigious races at the Meadowlands this Saturday afternoon, August 6th. Pick your favorites, root for them, and bet on them if you're so inclined. Thanking you and all our guests, I'm your host, Dr. Gregory Barroza.